Okay, hello and welcome to the Capital Extension Fall 2025 Design Update. My name is Erica Rubio, Community Outreach Coordinator for the Capital Extension Project. Thank you very much for joining us here this evening. Before we begin, we want to let you know that live Spanish interpretation is available for this meeting. There may be occasional pauses throughout the presentation to ensure our English and Spanish presentations are in sync. Now, I would like to introduce our fantastic Spanish interpreter, Paulette.
Hola, buenas tardes. Yo voy a ser su intérprete esta noche. Estamos proveyendo interpretación simultánea en español. Es posible que haya pausas durante la presentación. El canal de audio en español está aquí en la pantalla. Marcar este número con este código de acceso y la contraseña. Gracias.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paulette. Now, before we jump in, I would like to share a few tips for today's meeting. First, please know that all participants have been muted to avoid background noise. There will also be a question and answer session at the end of this presentation. You can submit your questions at any time during the meeting using the Q&A function at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. I will share additional Q&A instructions at the end of the presentation. There is also closed captioning available for this meeting. You can turn on the captioning option from the meeting menu. And finally, we hope everyone has a smooth experience today. But if you have any issues at all, you can always call WebEx support or call into the meeting using the phone number on screen. As we move on from the slide, we will also have those numbers in chat so you could easily reference them at any point. All right, let's jump in. Joining me for today's presentation is Paul Lopez, Project Manager for the Capital Extension, and Marcus Coleman, City of Phoenix's Light Rail Administrator. We will begin by reviewing the history of the Capital Extension and its connection to the I-10 West project. You will learn more about the Phoenix City Council decision process, which will determine how light rail moves forward in the city. You will also get to see and compare the 3 updated routes being proposed for the Capital Extension. And then we will wrap everything up with letting you know all of the different ways that you can submit your feedback before we jump into the question and answer session with the team. Speaking of feedback, your feedback is critically important to this process. We take everything that you submit, whether it be by paper form, online feedback form, a phone call, an email, and we include all of those comments in a report that will be provided to Phoenix City Council and the Valley Metro Rail Board of Directors ahead of the decision that will be made later this month. That report is sent to City Council to help them understand the public's opinions, values, and hopes for the project before they vote on how to move forward. I want to share a bit of background about the Capital and I-10 West extensions. I will begin by saying that originally the Capital and I-10 West extensions were approved as one long project back in 2012. So that means that the extension would begin right where the current system ends in downtown off of 3rd Avenue, extend through the Capitol Mall area, and then carry us out to West Phoenix by the Desert Sky Transit Center. A few years after that original plan in 2026, Phoenix City Council voted to split the project into 2 separate phases. Phase 1 became the Capital Extension, otherwise known as CAPEX, which would build that critical first step into taking light rail west. Phase 2 became the I-10 West project, also known as 10 West, which would travel out again to Desert Sky Transit Center. Now I would like to introduce Paul Lopez to share some of the finer details about that 10 West project.
Thank you, Erica. As the audience will notice, we have an exhibit here on the screen. And what I'll do is I'll kind of explain the 2 different projects. So on the bottom right of your screen on that picture, with the map is being oriented to the north is up. That green little loop area there is the CAPEX project. It was basically originally planned to be on Jefferson and Washington as of this particular exhibit. And then you'll see some other colors in there, which is the connection point from CAPEX to the gray line, which is the 10 West extension. Those colored lines that you'll see in there, we'll talk a little bit about those as we move forward, but those are some, and they're blown up just to the top of that exhibit so you can see them, but they are some of the exhibits that we had gone out with earlier this summer on how we would tie the CAPEX project, again in green, to the 10 West project in gray. And we'll hit on those a little bit more as we get further into it. But moving forward, just explaining the 10 West project a little bit, it extends from roughly about 19th Avenue in Van Buren westerly to the I-17, at which point it would turn due north up to the I-10, and then it would come up in the median of I-10. Oh, sorry, there we go. In the median of I-10 and head westerly all the way down to about 43rd Avenue, at which point it would transition over to the north side of I-10, no longer running in the median, but running adjacent to the drainage canal on the north side, running all the way down westerly to about 79th Avenue, at which point it would turn due north, ending at Desert Sky Transit Center. As you can see, there's some white dots depicted on this gray line. We have roughly about 8 stations through this corridor. These are all preliminary, as is the I-10 West design right now. It's all in a preliminary design. And so some of this is still subject and up for public comment, and will go out at a later date as the second phase of this project. Today we're here mainly to focus on CAPEX, but wanted to get everybody a big picture of how these two projects tie together and where we're ultimately going with them. A couple other things is along this corridor, we're looking, you'll see a little P designated there around 59th Avenue. That's where we have some plans for a park and ride somewhere around that 59th Avenue area. And one thing of particular note is as we go down the I-10 freeway and the freeways here, we have less intersections to interact with, as well as because there's not as many signals like there would be on a local street, which also means we can travel at a little bit higher speed than we can on some of these local arterials and other streets. And so those are the things of particular note on the I-10 West project, as well as the CAPEX. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Erica. You're muted, Erica.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul. So this slide here shows the complete history of the development of the CAPEX and 10 West projects together. It's quite a long timeline, and so if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of the details, I do recommend visiting valleymetro.org/CAPEX, where you can see a full history of the project. I do want to point out 2 dates in particular. One was in 2024, in which SB 1102 was signed into legislation. That did 2 very important things for the capital extension project. The first was that it allowed Prop 479 to appear on ballots to allow voters to have a say in transit investment in the community. Voters did pass that. And the next thing that SB 1102 did, which had a very heavy impact on the capital extension project, is that it included a new restriction in the Capitol Mall area that prevented high capacity transit, such as light rail, from traveling within a certain distance next to the Capitol building. That meant that we were no longer allowed to be within 50 yards of the Capitol itself, which did impact the originally planned alignment. It was originally intended to travel down Washington, turn on 19th Avenue, and return on Jefferson. After SB 1102 was enacted and the restriction became in place, we had to shorten the route to instead turn around on 15th Avenue. It was at that point where we had to go back out into the public in May 2025 to then ask the question of how do we want the now shortened CAPEX project to connect to 10 West. So that leads us to this image that may look familiar to some of you. This is the map that we use to get feedback starting again in May 2025 to ask the public how they wanted the two projects to connect. There was a northern option and 2 southern options. that traveled on 15th Avenue and 16th Avenue. And we used these maps to get feedback to determine where people valued and prioritized those connection points the most. So we concluded that outreach in October of 2025. And during that time, we found a few key themes. So those themes, the ones that stood out loud and clear, was, of course, support for community development. Our respondents were quite savvy, and they knew that wherever light rail goes, community investment tends to follow, and they wanted that for the Capitol Mall area. The next common theme was the preservation of historic neighborhoods. So there are historic neighborhoods located immediately adjacent to the north and south of the Capitol Mall area. And how the light rail interacted with those neighborhoods was of importance to the folks who live there. Last but not least, we saw that there was a desire to maintain the ease of access for those commuting by car into the capital area. So there's a lot of commuters, a lot of people driving in. They wanted to make sure that they were still able to easily access their usual routes. So I will go ahead and skip ahead here. Oh, actually, I will say that it was this feedback that we found that the project team used to develop the updated routes that we are going to present today. And we're excited to show you those. But before I do have one more consideration to show you, and that is this topic here. So, in addition to discussing the updated routes, there is an additional consideration that has come up from Phoenix City Council. They have a very important decision to make on January 27th, just a few weeks from now, this year. So, the question that they are considering and what we are asking feedback from you, the public, on is this. We want to know if you prefer moving forward with the Capitol extension and then 10 West extension as planned, or if you prefer the option to possibly reevaluate how high capacity transit reaches the West Valley, specifically West Phoenix. So as you are viewing the updated routes today, as you are getting prepared to fill out your feedback form, keep that question in mind because, well, Phoenix City Council is looking towards the feedback from the public as they are making that decision. Okay, so we have talked about those updated routes long enough. Now it is time for Paul to give you the details. So Paul, can you please provide an overview of all of our different route options?
Sure. So thanks, Erica. Moving forward, looking at the first option, it's our option called 16th Avenue North. And just to give you a little context on where we're at here on this map, on the far right, you'll see where the existing light rail system currently terminates, as Erica indicated, at 3rd Avenue in Washington and 3rd Avenue in Jefferson. And then from that point, we would be able to pick up from some spurs that go out on Washington and go out on Jefferson at those locations. And on Washington, we would allow for the westbound train to go down to 4th Avenue, at which point it would turn due south and go down to 4th Avenue in Jefferson. Conversely, on the other side at Jefferson, the track could also go easterly or goes easterly to tie into the single track loop there. So up until 4th Avenue, we've got a single track loop, meaning that the direction of the trains going on Washington are westbound and the direction of the trains on Jefferson are going eastbound. At 4th Avenue, we on this particular alignment combine the two tracks and run them side by side in a dual track configuration from 4th Avenue westerly all the way down to 14th Avenue, roughly Cudahy Avenue as well, also known as Cudahy. At that point, we would turn due north going up to Washington, at which point we would then go westerly just past Wesley Boland Park before turning north and then heading north up into Van Buren. You can see that depicted here with this dashed line on this map. The red dashed line picks up from that CAPEX termination point and extends westerly to tie into the 10 West project. What you'll see there is it's a red dashed line. We would have to go elevated over the top of the BNSF Railroad there at 19th Avenue, and then we would continue westerly to the I-17 corridor, at which point, like I mentioned earlier with the gray line on the previous map, we would then go to the I-10 and run down the center of the median there. So this is the first alignment alternative for consideration under option 1. On the left side, you'll see that it's roughly about 1.3 miles of track. The schedule impacts and the estimated property impacts are low on this one because we've studied this area in our previous alignments, both the Washington and Jefferson corridor. So there's not a whole lot of new things we don't know on this particular alignment. We just have done some value engineering to basically run dual track on Jefferson and minimize impacts on Washington. And the overall costs and improve efficiencies. So that gives you an idea of that first alignment. You'll also see that there's some white dots on this map, and those show the potential station locations. One is just east of 7th Avenue. Another one is there between 12th Avenue and 15th Avenue. And then yet another one just north of Adams Street up there on the north segment going to Van Buren. That one's fairly close to the Capitol, and those are the 3 stations that would be proposed on this alignment. Moving into the second alignment, that's our 16th Avenue South alignment. And that one you'll see here is depicted by the green line, and it goes down to the red line, similar to the other. In very similar fashion, it starts at 3rd Avenue there, tying into the existing system, going down to 4th Avenue and Jefferson, at which point it would run dual track. So very similar to the first one, all the way up to 4th Avenue. Then from 4th Avenue, we would head westerly down to 16th Avenue. So in this one, we'll go past 14th Avenue, we'll go down to 16th Avenue, and then we would head due south on 16th Avenue to the point of Madison. At Madison, we would then bear westerly, going through 17th Avenue to approximately 18th Avenue before terminating this alignment. At that point, you can see there's a red dashed line. That would be the extension to the 10 West. We would pick up from roughly 18th Avenue, meander a little bit to the south and get on the Jackson alignment as we pass 19th Avenue and that BNSF railroad crossing, which again has to be elevated. At which point we would then go to I-17, work our way northerly, and go up to I-10 West. So again, this one's a little bit different of a route than you'll notice than the next option and the first option, in that we're using Jackson to get to I-17. But once we get to I-17, all 3 are very similar in that we're trying to get to 10 West to run in that center median. On the left side of this slide, you'll also see that it's about 1.3 miles of track, so very close to the first alternative. We don't anticipate significant schedule impacts or building impacts on this one because, again, this is another corridor that we have previously studied along Jefferson. So there's nothing really significantly new that we haven't studied on this, and we anticipate this one could keep on schedule. Moving to the next one, which is our 7th Avenue North alignment. You'll see this is very similar at the starting point, again, down at 3rd Avenue in Washington and Jefferson. We go again down 4th Avenue, and we start dual track at 4th Avenue in Jefferson. We then go westerly, continuing through that station that is roughly at 7th Avenue. But this is where this one starts to diverge a little bit from the other 2, and that is that we would go northerly on 7th Avenue to the intersection of Grand and Van Buren and 7th Avenue, at which point we would then turn due westerly and go west on Van Buren, picking up a station just to the west of 7th Avenue, somewhere between 7th and 9th, and then going down to another station roughly at 15th to 16th Avenue. We would terminate this alignment at 16th Avenue, and then from that point, pick up the 10 West extension with the red dash line at 16th Avenue, heading down Van Buren, again elevated over the BNSF at 19th Avenue, and connecting to I-17, where we would then again go north to the I-10 West corridor. This one's roughly 1.2 miles, so fairly close, just a little bit smaller, but pretty much the same. But we do anticipate that there could be some schedule impacts and some potential right-of-way impacts because this is a corridor that we haven't studied in as much detail or for as long as we have the Washington and Jefferson corridors. So Van Buren, we would have to do some extra vetting out of this process and this design, including looking at the intersection with our partners at City of Phoenix. We know that's a very important intersection at 7th Avenue and Van Buren and Grand. We know it's complicated, and it's something that we would be willing to work through with the design process. So with that, we'll go to, I think, a slide that shows all three of them side by side so that everybody can get an idea of how they all align. As you'll see on the right side, they're all very similar down by 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue. They all do double track. They all have that 7th Avenue station. But then, like you see, the three different alternatives diverge. 16 South and North both have that station at 12th and between 12th and 15th. But then they have stations as you go further to the west that are a little bit different. As far as the purple line with 7th Avenue North, you'll see that that one has stations along Van Buren, but similar spacing as far as all of the stations throughout the corridors. You'll notice that on the 16 South option, the connection to 10 West with the red dash line is different than is 7th Avenue North and 16th Avenue North. So those are some of the things to consider when you're looking at these alignments and thinking about how you would get to them, how you might use them, how the public might use them, and how convenient they can be. The last slide that I have to present to you shows a table of comparison. This comparison on the very far left column, you'll see that the track symbol, the schedule symbol, and again, the right-of-way symbol. And we tried to basically give a side-by-side comparison. So in terms of track, we've got 1.3 miles on both 16th Avenue South and North option. We anticipate low schedule impacts and or property impacts because, again, we've studied these two corridors extensively. On 7th Avenue, again, that's one that we haven't studied so much. And so while it's a little bit shorter, ballpark the same, it's about 0.1 miles shorter. We do anticipate some medium to moderate schedule impacts as well as potential property impacts and design stuff, evaluation as we go through. And then on the last column on the right, you'll see that reevaluation, which is that option 2 that the council would like feedback on. And that one, we just don't know what the design could be, nor do we know exactly what the right-of-way or impacts could be. But we do know that the schedule impacts are potentially high in comparison to the other three. And so with that, I would like to kind of hand it back over to our light rail administrator for the city of Phoenix, Marcus, to talk a little bit more about the importance of sharing your feedback.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for running us through all the technical aspects of that. As Paul stated, and also Erica stated earlier in the presentation, is that really where we're trying to lead to this is getting your feedback so that we can inform our mayor and council prior to the meeting that they have scheduled for January 27th to hear this item of what your feedback is. What are your thoughts? What are your concerns? Do you have support of one of these options? And the options that would be presented to our council are one of two. The first option is for them to adopt an updated light rail corridor for the CAPEX project. And the second option is to do a reevaluation of high capacity transit investment to reaching West Phoenix. I will be remiss if I didn't say this. It's extremely important as we go through this process that our council not only wants to know from a technical aspect and a financial aspect, which the team is working diligently on putting that information together, but they also want to know from the constituents, from riders, from visitors, from all of you, what are your concerns? What are your thoughts? What are your suggestions? And more so, what are your recommendations to that council? And so it's extremely important that the information that we put together now and present to our council is information that will have them informed of what their constituents are thinking, what the community is thinking, so that way when they make that decision, they can better formulate those decisions based on all aspects of that evaluation. Next slide. So one of the things that we've done to try to make this as easy as possible and as accessible as possible, because we understand that we have to create different ways for people to not only provide their feedback, but for us to collect that feedback as well. One of the options that we have that you'll see on the screen right now is there's a QR code that's been made available. If you want to scan that QR code, it will take you directly to the survey. You can fill out that survey. You can also take a screenshot of it and share it with others. Another opportunity that we have is through the valleymetro.org/CAPEX website. If you go to that website, you can go there and you can not only fill out the feedback form, but you can look at meeting materials. And we also have a narrated version of of a public meeting, similar to what we are doing today, so that you can follow along with the narrated version of a presentation, as similar as if you were there in person or if you had joined online. And we know that it's critical that we provide this information in ways that is easy for people to digest and understand. And so we try to make sure that we're being transparent with every step of this process and making sure that we make the information as accessible as possible. So the call for action that we have to you all, the call for action is that first, we want you to fill out the feedback form and make sure that you have your recommendations and feedbacks recorded. But we're also asking that you share this information with family, friends, coworkers, and others that you know that may live in the area, that work, play, worship in the area, that visit the area, or even just in general, transit users and even non-transit users. It's really important that we have a holistic view that we paint for our mayor and council of what we're hearing. So every view, every comment is counted. We're going through a very rigorous process to make sure that each of the feedback forms is recorded, comments are recorded, and that information is being captured and reported to our mayor and council. And so I know that I've stated earlier, and I'll state it again, this item is going to our full council on January 27th for a policy meeting. And so I would ask that you take advantage of time and complete this information as quickly as possible so that we can make sure that we capture all of the feedback as we prepare for this presentation to our mayor and council. And with that, I won't belabor the point any longer, and I will kick us back over to Erica to set us off for our question and answer portion of the presentation.
Fantastic, Marcus. Thank you very much. So everyone, I will be providing some instructions about how you can ask your questions today. First option is a written question. So to submit a written question, you can find the apps button, which is pictured on screen, at the bottom right-hand corner of your, whether it's your phone or your monitor. Once you find the apps button, you will then click the audience Q&A button to submit your question. If you go the written option, your question will be read by a moderator. The second option is to verbally ask your question. To use this option, you will find the raise hand button on the meeting app. When it is your turn, you will see a prompt on your screen asking you to unmute yourself. Click the unmute button, and then it'll be your turn to ask your question. If you are calling in via phone line, you can hit *3 to raise your hand. When you are called on, you will unmute yourself by hitting *6 when prompted. Now, if you're calling in, I know that you can't see the instructions on screen, so I'll say that one more time. You'll hit *3 to raise your hand. And when you are called on, you will unmute by hitting *6. All right, now with that, we will go ahead and open up the Q&A. Moderator, do we have any questions?
Not at this time.
All right, looks like we did a really great job at explaining the options. Okay, everyone. So we will give you some time now to go ahead and think up a question. While you do so and get those submitted, I will give some updates about what to look forward to for the rest of this project, or for the rest of this outreach period, rather. Again, it is so important that you encourage your friends, family, folks that you know take the train, or even if they are drivers, but they happen to live in one of the areas nearby the routes. Let everybody know that this is happening in a consideration for the growth of your community. I say that if they don't have the time to view the video online, there is additionally one more final chance to attend a hybrid meeting that is in person or online on Thursday, January 15th. If you'd like to attend in person, that will be held at Neighborhood Ministries, which is near the Capitol Mall area. And again, that will be hybrid, so you could view it online as well. You can find information about that meeting on the CAPEX website, valleymetro.org/CAPEX. And it looks like we have a question. Moderator?
Yes. How does the TIP subcommittee decision impact the city council decision?
So the Transportation Infrastructure and Planning Subcommittee, that is their recommendation that so the action that they took is a recommendation that will be presented in the council report to the full council. How it affects it is it just allows for the full council to know that this item was presented to the subcommittee and that was the recommendation by the subcommittee. It does not tie any of the full council to any directive. It doesn't even tie the members of that subcommittee to that same action that was taken at that subcommittee meeting. So it's just a recommendation that was moved forward. And it will be noted as that was a recommendation that was moved forward. However, the full council, all members of the full council have the opportunity to vote for option 1 or option 2, depending on what their preference is.
Okay, somebody has been following along the process. Good question. All right, we will allow some more time for people to get their questions in. While we, oh, go ahead, moderator.
How soon could construction start if option 1 is selected?
So if option 1 was selected and one of the preferred alternatives were selected, let's say it was 16 north or south, we could start with some of the utility relocations, probably middle of this year, middle to end of this year, and then start moving forward with some of the rail construction the following year. If we went with the 7th Avenue North alternative or alignment, that might push anywhere from 4 to 6 months on the start times for both the utility relocates and or any of the additional construction as far as the start times. So you're probably looking at, the first two options, 16 North, 16 South, being the ones that could get to construction soonest. And you're probably looking at 6 to 8 months from this point in time that we get a decision to move forward with those if they are selected.
Now, as we are waiting for more questions to come in, I will go ahead and proactively let you know what our deadline is for comment submissions. Of course, the sooner the better for submitting your feedback, so we can go ahead and get that all tallied and analyzed. If you are, again, doing your due diligence and letting your friends and family know that we are doing this outreach, we have until Friday, January 16th to submit your comments. Again, that deadline is Friday, January 16th. That'll be the last date to submit your comments so it can be included in that report to Phoenix City Council. Now, I think we do have a very up-to-date and well, we'll say a knowledgeable group. I'm pointing out that tip question that was there. And so we may be running into the end of our questions here. I am going to go ahead and give it 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes for any final questions to be submitted. If you log off of this meeting and think of a question later, you can always submit your comments, your questions directly to me, Erica Rubio, with the information on screen. That is my email address and my phone number. Your questions and your comments, whether it's submitted by feedback form, email, or phone, will all equally be added to the record so that your thoughts are known and shared with Phoenix City Council. All right, no pressure, everyone, but I'm giving you 1 more minute to get that question in. All right, and with that, I think we may have a meeting. So thank you all very much for joining us this evening. We know your time is precious and you have so many options on how you can spend your time on this beautiful rainy day. So we really appreciate you taking the time to learn about the project. Of course, share your feedback about the project and the future of transit in your community. And as you log off, please, please remember to let your friends, family, colleagues, casual, people that you run into when you're taking the train, anybody, let them know that we are doing this outreach, that your feedback is incredibly valuable, and we need it to keep this process moving forward. So thank you, everybody. It is 6:35, and we will call that the end of our meeting. Have a good night, everyone.